What if I told you that Princess Diana secretly recorded 7 hours of explosive audio tapes that contained the most devastating royal secrets ever revealed? What if those recordings were so dangerous that people were attacked, offices were ransacked, and lives were threatened to keep them hidden? Tonight, I'm unveiling the true story behind Princess Diana's secret tapes, the recordings that shattered the monarchy's carefully crafted image and exposed truths so shocking that the royal family is still trying to bury them today. These aren't just any recordings. These are Diana's own words, spoken in her darkest moments, revealing suicide attempts, royal betrayals, and family secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. If you're ready to hear the truth that Princess Diana risked everything to tell, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story will change everything you thought you knew about the people's princess and the institution that destroyed her. Kensington Palace, Diana's private sitting room, September 1991, 2:30 p.m. My name is Diana, Princess of Wales, and today I'm about to break every rule that has governed royal silence for centuries. The small tape recorder sits on the coffee table in front of me, its red recording light glowing like a tiny beacon of rebellion. James Colthurst, my dear friend and the only person I trust completely, has just pressed the record button and quietly left the room. What I'm about to say into this machine will eventually find its way to journalist Andrew Morton, though we'll both deny that connection for years to come. I take a deep breath and lean forward, my hands trembling slightly. The weight of what I'm about to do feels enormous. For 10 years, I've lived a lie. For 10 years, I've smiled for the cameras while dying inside. For 10 years, I've protected an institution that has shown me nothing but cruelty and indifference. But not today. Today, I tell the truth. I suppose you could say I'm finally ready to speak. I begin, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm ready to tell you about the real story behind the fairy tale that never was. The irony isn't lost on me. Here I am, sitting in the very palace that has become my prison, about to reveal secrets that could bring down the monarchy itself. The walls around me are covered with priceless paintings and photographs of royal ceremonies, each one a reminder of the performance I've been forced to maintain every single day. I think about Charles, probably at Highgrove with Camilla at this very moment, completely unaware that his wife is about to expose their sham marriage to the world. I think about the Queen, who has never once asked how I'm really feeling, never once shown genuine concern for my well-being. I think about all the palace officials who have dismissed my cries for help as emotional instability and attention-seeking behavior. They have no idea what's coming. Let me start with the wedding, I continue, settling back into my chair. The day the whole world thought was the most romantic moment in royal history. The day I call the worst day of my life. I close my eyes and transport myself back to July 29, 1981. St. Paul's Cathedral. 700 million people watching worldwide. The longest royal train in history trailing behind me. Everyone believing they were witnessing a fairy tale come true. I was so young, I whisper into the microphone. Just 20 years old, and I had never had a serious boyfriend. Charles was 32, and he was in love with another woman. But nobody wanted to acknowledge that inconvenient truth. The memories flood back with painful clarity. The morning of the wedding, I had discovered that Charles was planning to give Camilla Parker Bowles a bracelet engraved with their intimate nicknames. My heart had shattered before I even walked down the aisle. I remember standing at the altar, looking for Camilla in the congregation, I confessed to the tape recorder. Even on my wedding day, I knew she was there, watching as I married the man she loved. The man who loved her back. I pause, collecting myself. This is harder than I expected, but I need to continue. The truth has been buried for too long. People ask me if I had any idea what I was getting into. The honest answer is that I was completely naive. I thought love would be enough. I thought that if I just tried hard enough, if I was perfect enough, if I gave him children and supported his work, he would eventually love me the way I loved him. My voice breaks slightly as I remember the devastating realization that came just weeks after the honeymoon. But I was wrong. I was never the woman he wanted. I was just the virgin bride who could give him heirs and help him fulfill his duty. And when I tried to be anything more than that, when I tried to have opinions or feelings or needs of my own, I was told I was being difficult. I lean closer to the microphone, my voice gaining strength. What I'm about to tell you over the next several hours will shock you. It will break your heart. And it will probably destroy my life. But I can't live with this secret anymore. I can't pretend that everything is fine when my marriage is a lie, when I've attempted to take my own life multiple times, when I'm fighting an eating disorder that nobody in this family wants to acknowledge. I take another deep breath, steeling myself for what comes next. They think they can control me, silence me, make me disappear into the background. But they're wrong. Today, I take back my voice. Today, I tell my story. And once these tapes are made public, nothing will ever be the same again. As I sit there in the afternoon light streaming through the palace windows, I have no idea that my decision to make these recordings will set off a chain of events that will rock the monarchy to its core. I don't know that within months, there will be break-ins, threats, and mysterious accidents targeting anyone connected to this project. All I know is that I can't keep living this lie. And the truth, as painful as it might be, is about to set me free. Still recording, 3:15 p.m. Let me tell you about the moment I realized my marriage was over. I continue, my voice steadier now. It wasn't during a fight. It wasn't when I discovered another piece of evidence about Camilla. It was something much simpler and much more devastating. I shift in my chair, remembering a conversation that had taken place just 2 weeks earlier. Charles had returned from a weekend at Highgrove, and I had tried, once again, to discuss our relationship, to find some way to reconnect. I asked him if he loved me, I say into the microphone. After 10 years of marriage, after 2 children, after everything we'd been through together, I asked him the most basic question a wife can ask her husband. Do you love me? The memory is still fresh, still painful. I can see Charles's face clearly, the way he had looked at me with something between pity and irritation. He said, "Whatever love means." Can you imagine? Those were his exact words. Whatever love means. As if love was some abstract concept that was too complicated for someone like me to understand. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the gardens where tourists are taking photographs of the palace that has become my beautiful prison. That's when I knew that nothing I could ever do would be enough. I could be the perfect princess, the perfect mother, the perfect royal wife, and it would never matter because I wasn't the woman he wanted. I wasn't Camilla. The bitterness in my voice surprises even me. 4 years, I've tried to be understanding, to be mature about Charles's relationship with his mistress. But recording these tapes is stripping away all my pretenses, all my carefully maintained composure. People don't understand what it's like to live with someone who's in love with another person, I continue. They don't understand the constant comparisons, the way every conversation becomes about what she would think, what she would do, how she would handle things. I return to my chair, feeling suddenly exhausted by the weight of these memories. I tried everything to win him back. I lost weight until I was dangerously thin. I studied his interests, learned about architecture and philosophy and everything else he cared about. I threw myself into royal duties, thinking that if I could just be the perfect princess, he would notice me, appreciate me, maybe even love me. The irony is bitter. The harder I tried to be perfect, the more my mental health deteriorated. The more I succeeded in public, the more I was falling apart in private. That's when the bulimia started, I admit, my voice dropping to almost a whisper. It was 1982, just after William was born. Charles made a comment about my weight, said I was a bit chubby, and something inside me just snapped. This is the first time I've ever spoken about my eating disorder to anyone outside my immediate family. Even my closest friends don't know the full extent of what I've been going through. People think bulimia is about vanity, about wanting to be thin. But for me, it was about control. When everything else in my life was dictated by protocol and duty and other people's expectations, my body was the one thing I could control. If I couldn't control my husband's love or my mother-in-law's approval or the media's attention, at least I could control what I ate. The admission feels like a physical release. I've been carrying this secret for 9 years, and speaking it aloud to this tape recorder feels like finally setting down a weight I've been carrying alone. I would binge and purge sometimes 5 times a day. I would eat until I was sick, then make myself vomit, then eat again. It was compulsive, destructive, and I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. Every time I tried to talk to Charles about it, he would change the subject or tell me to see a doctor, as if it was just a medical problem that could be fixed with pills. I pause, remembering the countless times I had tried to explain to my husband that I wasn't just physically ill. I was drowning emotionally, desperately in need of love and support and understanding. The worst part was that the eating disorder made me even more isolated. I couldn't eat normally at state dinners or family meals without fear of losing control. I started avoiding social situations, which made everyone think I was being difficult or antisocial. They didn't understand that I was fighting for my life every single day. The tape recorder continues to run silently, capturing every word, every pause, every moment of vulnerability that I'm sharing with this machine instead of with the people who are supposed to love and support me. But the bulimia was just the beginning. I continue, my voice gaining strength again. Because when you're that desperate, when you're that invisible in your own life, you start thinking about more permanent solutions. I take a deep breath, preparing to reveal the most closely guarded secret of my entire life. In 1982, when I was 4 months pregnant with William, I threw myself down the stairs at Sandringham. The words hang in the air like a confession that changes everything. I've never told anyone the complete truth about that day, never admitted that it was a deliberate attempt to end my life. I was so desperate for Charles's attention, so desperate for someone to acknowledge that I was in pain, that I literally threw myself down a flight of stairs, hoping that either I would die or that the shock would make him realize how much he was hurting me. I remember lying at the bottom of those stairs, bleeding and terrified, wondering if I had just killed both myself and my unborn child. I remember Charles's face when he found me, not concerned, not loving, but angry that I had caused yet another scene. The Queen Mother was the first to reach me. She stepped over me lying on the floor and said, "The princess is having another of her attention-seeking episodes. Not, is she hurt? Not, should we call a doctor? Just dismissal and disgust." That moment had crystallized everything wrong with my life, everything wrong with this family, everything wrong with the institution I had married into. I lost a lot of blood that day, but William survived. And I realized that even attempting suicide wasn't enough to get Charles to love me, wasn't enough to get this family to take my pain seriously. That's when I knew I was truly alone. As I sit here, recording these words for posterity, I know that admitting to attempted suicide will shock the world. I know that the royal family will be horrified that I'm revealing such private, damaging information. But I also know that staying silent is killing me just as surely as throwing myself down those stairs almost did. The truth is the only weapon I have left. And I'm finally ready to use it. Later that evening, Andrew Morton's office, South London, 8:45 p.m. I'm no longer Diana recording in the safety of Kensington Palace. Now I'm journalist Andrew Morton, and I've just received the first batch of tapes from James Colthurst. What I'm hearing is so explosive, so devastating, that I know my life is about to change forever. I sit in my cramped office, headphones on, transcribing Diana's words with shaking hands. Every revelation is more shocking than the last. The suicide attempt. The bulimia. Charles's cruelty. The royal family's cold indifference to a young woman's obvious mental health crisis. But what I don't know yet is that powerful forces are already moving against us. 3 floors above my office, in a room I'll never see, a man in an expensive suit is making a phone call that will set in motion a campaign of intimidation unlike anything I've ever experienced. Morton has the tapes, the voice says quietly into a secure telephone line. We need to know exactly what's on them, and we need to stop this project before it goes any further. Within hours of that phone call, my office building's security system will be mysteriously disabled. By morning, my office will be ransacked, though nothing of obvious value will be taken. Instead, the intruders will focus on my files, my phone records, my research notes, anything that might reveal the source of my information about the Princess of Wales. But I'm unaware of any of this as I continue transcribing Diana's devastating testimony. The Christmas of 1989 was when I finally understood that Charles would never leave Camilla. Diana's voice continues through my headphones. He gave her a bracelet with their special nicknames engraved on it, Gladys and Fred, and he didn't even try to hide it from me. I paused the tape, trying to process the implications. The future King of England, publicly married to one woman, was openly giving jewelry to his mistress. The constitutional crisis this could create is staggering. I confronted Camilla directly at her sister's birthday party, Diana continues. I walked up to her and said, "I know what's going on between you and Charles. I just want you to know that I know." She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You have everything you could possibly want. You have 2 beautiful boys. What more do you need?" The casual cruelty in that response takes my breath away. Here is a woman destroying another woman's marriage, and she acts as if Diana should be grateful for the scraps of affection Charles throws her way. That's when I realized that this wasn't just an affair, Diana's voice continues, now tinged with a bitter understanding. This was a systematic replacement. Camilla wasn't just Charles's mistress. She was his real wife in everything but name. I was just the breeding stock, the public face, the expendable princess who could be discarded once I'd served my purpose. I stopped the tape and leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed by what I'm hearing. This isn't just a story about an unhappy marriage. This is a story about institutional cruelty on a scale that could bring down the monarchy. But as I reach for my phone to call my editor, I notice something strange. The line is dead. Not busy, dead. Complete silence. I walk to the window and look down at the street below. A van I've never seen before is parked directly across from my building, and I can see figures inside, watching. My hands begin to shake as I realize that Diana's fears about being watched, being monitored, being controlled, might not be paranoia after all. I quickly lock the tapes in my office safe and gather my most important notes. Whatever forces are moving against this project, they're already closer than I thought. The next morning, I receive a phone call that chills me to the bone. Mr. Morton, a cultured voice says, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if you abandoned your current project. The royal family values its privacy, and there are consequences for those who violate that privacy. Who is this? I demand, but the line goes dead. An hour later, James Colthurst calls me from a hospital bed. He's been knocked off his bicycle by a hit-and-run driver while riding to Kensington Palace. The driver was never found, and the police seem remarkably uninterested in investigating. It wasn't an accident, James whispers into the phone. The car came directly at me. Someone knows what we're doing, Andrew. Someone knows about the tapes. That evening, I'm walking back to my office when I notice I'm being followed. Two men in dark suits, keeping exactly the same distance behind me for 6 blocks. When I turn to confront them, they disappear into the crowd. I begin looking over my shoulder constantly, standing well back from subway platforms, checking my car for tampering every morning. The paranoia that Diana described in her tapes is becoming my reality too. But the most chilling moment comes a week later, when I receive an envelope with no return address. Inside is a single photograph, Diana leaving Kensington Palace to visit a friend. The photo is time-stamped from the previous day, and written on the back in neat handwriting are the words, "We're watching." I realize that Diana's decision to make these tapes hasn't just exposed the royal family secrets, it's put all of us in danger. But we've come too far to stop now. The truth is too important, too devastating, too necessary to keep hidden. Even if telling it might cost us everything. Buckingham Palace, Private Office of the Queen's Private Secretary, October 1991, 7 a.m. Sir Robert Fellows, the Queen's Private Secretary and Diana's brother-in-law, places a red folder marked "Strictly Confidential" on his mahogany desk. Inside are surveillance photographs, transcribed phone conversations, and a detailed report about a crisis that threatens to destroy the monarchy. "We have a problem," he says to the assembled group of senior palace officials. Princess Diana is cooperating with a journalist named Andrew Morton on what appears to be an unauthorized biography. Our sources indicate she has made extensive audio recordings detailing private family matters. The room falls silent. Everyone understands the implications. Diana's cooperation with Morton represents the first time in modern history that a senior royal has broken the code of silence that protects the institution. "What exactly does she reveal on these tapes?" asks the Queen's press secretary, his voice tight with concern. Sir Robert opens the folder and reads from a typed summary, "Suicide attempts. Eating disorders. Detailed accounts of the Prince of Wales's relationship with Mrs. Parker Bowles. Descriptions of family members' reactions to her mental health crises. Allegations of institutional indifference to her well-being." The silence stretches longer this time. Each revelation is more damaging than the last, and everyone in the room knows that if these tapes become public, the scandal will eclipse anything the royal family has ever faced. "How reliable is this intelligence?" someone asks. "Completely reliable. We have multiple sources confirming the existence of the recordings. Morton's office has been searched, and while we didn't find the tapes themselves, we found extensive notes that corroborate our information. What the palace officials don't know is that their search of Morton's office was actually a burglary that violated numerous laws. They don't know that the accident involving James Colthurst was actually attempted assault. They don't know that their surveillance of Diana has reached levels that would shock even the most cynical observer. But they do know that desperate times call for desperate measures. What are our options? Sir Robert asks. The discussion that follows would horrify anyone who believes in press freedom or basic human rights. Options are considered ranging from legal injunctions to character assassination, from financial pressure on publishers to more direct forms of intimidation. We could approach Morton directly, suggests one official. Offer him exclusive access to other royal stories in exchange for abandoning this project. We could discredit the princess, suggests another. Leak information about her mental health, suggest that anything she says is the product of psychological instability. We could pressure the intermediary, this Colthurst fellow. Make it clear that his medical career could suffer if he continues to facilitate this project. But Sir Robert shakes his head. All of those approaches assume we can control the narrative. What if we can't? What if Morton publishes regardless of our pressure? What if the tapes become public anyway? The question hangs in the air like a death sentence. Because everyone in that room knows that Diana's tapes don't just threaten individual reputations, they threaten the entire constitutional system. The public believes the royal family represents stability, tradition, moral authority, Sir Robert continues. If they discover that the future king's marriage is a sham, that the Princess of Wales has attempted suicide, that we've ignored obvious cries for help, the damage could be irreparable. He's interrupted by a knock on the door. A junior aide enters with a sealed envelope marked Urgent. Sir Robert opens it and reads the contents, his face growing pale. What is it? Someone asks. Morton has scheduled a meeting with his publisher. They're planning to rush the book into production. We may have weeks, not months, before this information becomes public. The room erupts in worried conversation, but Sir Robert raises his hand for silence. There's something else. Our sources indicate that Diana has made additional recordings. What we've described so far may only be the beginning. There could be hours more material, containing even more damaging revelations. The implications are staggering. If Diana has truly decided to expose everything, every secret, every cover-up, every moment of institutional cruelty, the monarchy as they know it could cease to exist. What does Her Majesty want us to do? Someone asks. Sir Robert's expression is grim. Her Majesty has made it clear that this crisis must be contained by any means necessary. The institution takes precedence over individuals, including family members who threaten that institution. The phrase, by any means necessary, carries weight that everyone in the room understands. The palace has resources, connections, and capabilities that go far beyond what the public realizes. When the monarchy is threatened, those resources can be deployed with devastating effect. However, Sir Robert continues, we must be extremely careful. If our involvement in suppressing this information becomes known, the scandal will be worse than anything Diana could reveal in her tapes. He closes the red folder and looks around the room. From this moment forward, everything we do must be completely deniable. No direct connections to the palace. No traceable communications. No evidence that could link any of our actions to the crown. The meeting ends with assignments being distributed, unofficial assignments that will never appear in any government record. Financial pressure will be applied to publishers. Personal information about Morton will be leaked to discredit him. Diana herself will be subjected to increased scrutiny and subtle forms of intimidation. But what the palace officials don't realize is that Diana has anticipated their response. She knows the institution well enough to predict their tactics. And she has prepared one final, devastating surprise that will change everything. Kensington Palace, Diana's private study, November 1991, 10:30 p.m. I'm back to being Diana, and I'm making what I know will be my final recording. The palace has escalated their campaign against the Morton Project, but their heavy-handed tactics have only strengthened my resolve to tell the complete truth. I know about the break-in at Andrew's office. I know about James's accident. I know about the surveillance, the phone taps, the threats. What the palace doesn't understand is that their intimidation tactics have provided me with the final piece of evidence I need to expose just how far they'll go to protect their secrets. This is Diana, and I'm making my last recording. I begin, my voice calm but determined. By the time anyone hears this, the world will already know about my bulimia, my suicide attempts, and Charles's affair with Camilla. But what they won't know yet is the most dangerous secret of all. I pause, knowing that what I'm about to reveal will cross a line from which there can be no return. The palace has been monitoring my private communications for years. They've been reading my mail, recording my phone calls, and tracking my movements. They've built a surveillance apparatus around me that would make a police state proud. This revelation will shock even people who think they understand how the royal family operates. The idea that the crown would spy on one of its own family members, would treat a princess like an enemy of the state, will shatter public faith in the institution. I have evidence, I continue, holding up a small device that my security expert Graham Harding found hidden in my sitting room. Listening devices in my private apartments. Camera equipment hidden in places where I should have complete privacy. They've been watching me shower, recording me with my children, documenting my most intimate moments. The scope of the surveillance is beyond anything the public could imagine. The same institution that preaches about duty and service has been treating me like a criminal under investigation. But that's not the worst part, I say, my voice growing stronger. The worst part is what they've done to silence the people trying to help me tell my story. I describe the intimidation campaign in detail, the break-ins, the accidents, the threats. Each incident is more shocking than the last, painting a picture of an institution that will use any method, legal or illegal, to protect its image. Andrew Morton's office was burglarized by people looking for these tapes. James Colthurst was deliberately run down by a car while riding his bicycle to visit me. They've made it clear that anyone who helps me tell my story will face consequences. But then I smile, knowing that I've been one step ahead of them the entire time. What they don't know is that I've been documenting their surveillance and intimidation campaign. Every listening device they've planted, every phone call they've monitored, every threat they've made, I have evidence of all of it. I hold up a second folder, thick with photographs and documents. Graham Harding hasn't just been helping me secure my communications. He's been gathering proof of the palace's illegal activities. We have photographs of the surveillance equipment. We have recordings of the threatening phone calls. We have evidence that will prove the Crown has been operating like a criminal organization. This is my insurance policy, my guarantee that the palace can't simply discredit me as an unstable woman having delusions. The physical evidence will force them to confront their own actions. I know what they'll try to do when Morton's book is published, I continue. They'll say I'm mentally ill, that my claims are the fantasies of someone having a breakdown. They'll try to paint me as an unreliable narrator, a woman whose word can't be trusted. I lean closer to the microphone, my voice dropping to an intense whisper. But they can't explain away photographs of listening devices. They can't dismiss documented evidence of harassment and intimidation. They can't claim that surveillance equipment planted in the Princess of Wales's private apartments is a figment of my imagination. This is the moment I've been building toward, the revelation that will make it impossible for the palace to dismiss my other claims. I'm not just a victim telling her story anymore. I'm a witness to criminal activity, and I have the evidence to prove it. I stand up and walk to my safe, retrieving additional documents that I've been preparing for months. In this folder are copies of internal palace memos discussing the Diana problem. Communications between senior officials about how to discredit me. Instructions for surveillance that go far beyond anything that could be legally justified. The documents I'm describing would cause a constitutional crisis if they became public. They prove that the palace has been treating a member of the royal family like an enemy of the state, using resources and methods that violate every principle of privacy and human dignity. I'm making copies of everything, the surveillance evidence, the intimidation documentation, the internal communications. One set goes to Andrew Morton for his book. Another set goes to a secure location where it will be released automatically if anything happens to me. This is my final gambit, my guarantee that the truth will come out regardless of what the palace might do to stop me. They think they can control me by controlling the people around me. They think they can silence me by making the cost of speaking too high. But they've made one critical mistake. I smile directly into the tape recorder, knowing that somewhere, someone in the palace is probably listening to this conversation. They've underestimated how far I'm willing to go to expose the truth. They've underestimated how much evidence I've gathered. And they've underestimated how determined I am to ensure that my story, the real story, gets told. I pause, letting the implications sink in. Morton's book will be just the beginning. If they try to suppress it, if they try to discredit me, if they escalate their campaign of intimidation, I'll release everything. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence that proves the Crown has been operating like a criminal organization. I lean back, feeling a sense of liberation I haven't experienced in years. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to use surveillance and intimidation to control me. But two can play that game, and I've been playing it better than they realize. As I reach to turn off the tape recorder, I know that this recording will change everything. The palace thought they were dealing with a desperate woman making emotional claims. Instead, they're facing a strategic opponent who has been gathering evidence of their illegal activities for months. The hunter has become the hunted, and the institution that thought it could crush me is about to discover that I have the power to destroy them instead. Andrew Morton's Publisher's Office, London, February 1992, 9 a.m. The room is silent except for the sound of pages turning as senior editors read through the manuscript that will change royal history forever. Andrew Morton sits at the head of the conference table, watching faces change as the full scope of Diana's revelations becomes clear. This is... The publisher begins, then stops, unable to find words adequate to describe what he's reading. Devastating, Morton supplies. Completely devastating. And every word of it is true. The manuscript contains everything. Diana's suicide attempts, her bulimia, Charles's affair, the royal family's cold indifference to her suffering. But more than that, it contains the evidence of surveillance and intimidation that transforms the book from a celebrity tell-all into an exposé of institutional corruption. The palace will claim she's mentally unstable, warns the legal department. They'll say these are the fantasies of someone having a breakdown. Morton slides a thick folder across the table. That's why she provided evidence. Photographs of surveillance equipment. Recordings of threatening phone calls. Documentation of the harassment campaign. They can dismiss her words, but they can't dismiss physical proof. The publisher opens the folder and examines the contents, his expression growing more serious with each page. "My God," he whispers. "They really were treating her like an enemy of the state." "It gets worse," Morton continues. "She's prepared for their response. If they try to suppress the book or escalate their intimidation campaign, she'll release even more damaging material. Internal palace communications. Evidence of illegal surveillance operations. Documentation that could bring down the government." The room falls silent as everyone processes the implications. This isn't just a book anymore. It's a nuclear weapon aimed at the heart of the British establishment. "What's our legal exposure?" someone asks. "Minimal," the lawyer responds. "Everything is documented. Everything is provable." The palace would have to admit to criminal activity to challenge most of these claims. The publisher leans back in his chair, understanding that he's making a decision that will define his career and possibly change history. "How many copies for the first printing?" he asks finally. "Given the explosive nature of the content," Morton suggests, "I'd recommend at least 100,000 copies. This is going to be the biggest royal story in decades." What none of them know is that 3 blocks away, in a nondescript government building, senior intelligence officials are holding their own emergency meeting about the Morton project. The book will be published, one official reports. Our attempts to suppress it have failed. If anything, our pressure tactics have strengthened Diana's resolve and provided her with additional evidence against us. The room is filled with men who have spent their careers protecting state secrets, and they understand better than anyone the damage that Diana's revelations could cause. "What's our assessment of the fallout?" someone asks. "Catastrophic," comes the reply. "Public confidence in the monarchy will plummet. The government's relationship with the palace will be severely damaged. International perception of British institutions will suffer permanent harm." But the most senior official in the room shakes his head grimly. "That's just from the book itself. Diana has made it clear that she has additional evidence, additional recordings, additional documentation. If we continue to pressure her, she could release material that would make today's revelations look minor." The irony is bitter. The same surveillance and intimidation campaign designed to control Diana has created the evidence that could destroy the institution they were trying to protect. Recommendations. The senior official asks. We stand down. Completely. No more surveillance, no more pressure, no more attempts to suppress the story. Diana has outmaneuvered us, and any further action on our part will only make the situation worse. Meanwhile, back at Kensington Palace, Diana sits in her study reading an advance copy of Morton's book. Seeing her words in print, seeing her story told with such clarity and detail, feels like the most liberating experience of her life. The phone rings. It's Morton. Diana, he says, his voice filled with emotion, I want you to know that what you've done is extraordinary. This book will change everything, not just for you, but for everyone who's ever been silenced by powerful institutions. Diana smiles, feeling a sense of peace she hasn't experienced in years. Andrew, she replies, I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to tell the truth. I wanted people to understand what really happened behind all the fairy tale imagery. You've been incredibly brave, Morton tells her. These tapes, this evidence you've gathered, it's changed how people will understand not just your story, but how power really operates in this country. 3 months later, Diana, her true story, is published and becomes an instant international sensation. The book sells over 100,000 copies in its first day, crashes bookstore websites, and dominates headlines around the world. But more importantly, it begins a conversation about institutional abuse, mental health, and the human cost of maintaining royal mythology that continues to this day. The palace's initial response is exactly what Diana predicted. They attempt to discredit her as mentally unstable, dismiss her claims as fantasies, and suggest that her words can't be trusted. But then Diana releases the surveillance evidence. Photographs of listening devices hidden in her private apartments appear in newspapers worldwide. Recordings of threatening phone calls are broadcast on television. Documentation of the harassment campaign against Morton and Coulthist is published in detail. The narrative shifts instantly. This is no longer a story about an unstable princess making wild claims. This is a story about an institution that was willing to break the law to silence a woman who was trying to tell the truth about her own life. Within weeks, the palace is forced to announce Charles and Diana's official separation. Within months, there are calls for parliamentary investigations into royal surveillance operations. Within years, the entire structure of how the monarchy operates has been fundamentally changed. But Diana pays a price for her courage. The 7 hours of tape recordings that exposed everything also exposed her to unprecedented levels of public scrutiny. Every detail of her private pain becomes public property. Every moment of her suffering becomes entertainment for millions. The woman who wanted to tell her own story discovers that losing control of that story comes with its own devastating consequences. Yet as Diana watches the impact of her decision ripple through British society, as she sees other women finding the courage to speak about their own experiences of institutional abuse, she knows that the cost was worth it. The 7 hours that exposed everything didn't just reveal royal secrets. They changed how the world thinks about power, privilege, and the right to speak your own truth. And in a palace that had tried to silence her forever, that was the most dangerous revelation of all. Princess Diana's 7 hours of secret recordings did more than expose royal secrets. They changed history itself. Those tapes didn't just reveal a failed marriage or family dysfunction. They exposed how powerful institutions use surveillance, intimidation, and systematic abuse to control the people who threaten their carefully constructed narratives. But Diana's courage came at the ultimate price. Just 5 years after Morton's book was published, she died in a Paris tunnel under circumstances that continue to raise questions. The woman who had outmaneuvered the most powerful institution in Britain, who had gathered evidence of their illegal activities, who had proven that even princesses could fight back, that woman was silenced forever. Today, those original 7 hours of recordings are locked away in a safe, out of public view, as Morton himself has confirmed. The complete truth of what Diana revealed may never be fully known. But her legacy lives on in every person who finds the courage to speak truth to power, every victim who refuses to be silenced, every individual who chooses transparency over institutional protection. Diana's secret tapes remind us that the most dangerous thing you can do to a corrupt system is tell the truth about it. They show us that even the most powerful institutions can be held accountable when brave people are willing to gather evidence and speak out. If Princess Diana's story of courage in the face of institutional abuse inspires you, if her example of fighting back against those who tried to silence her moves you to action in your own life, Please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Diana's message of resistance and truth-telling. Because Diana's secret wasn't just about exposing royal corruption. It was about proving that no institution, no matter how powerful, is more important than one person's right to tell their own story. And that's a secret that could change the world.